Hello and welcome to an all-new Max Chroma tutorial video. The year is 2022 and I'm here to bring you some new content. It's been a while, but I've been working full-time in the screen printing industry and doing color separations just about every day, a lot of really tricky ones. So I hope to bring you guys a lot of awesome new content. I'm going to try to put together a whole bunch of new stuff related to these new products and then just keep going with some examples of some of the work I do and show you guys all sorts of fun stuff. So one of the first products I'm going to show in this video is the new Max Chroma True HueInvert. It's just a simple little action for Photoshop, and it's really easy to do manually, but I made the action just to show some things that it does. And then I'll get to the new Max Chroma Photo Tessellator in a new video coming up, and also the Max Chroma Full Spectrum Gradient Map. So let's start off with the True HueInvert and just get right into that. If you click on that, you're going to get to this product page. You can download it. You can just enter in whatever. It doesn't have to be your email address. Just, you could just download it for free. You could read about that description, but I'm going to get right into it. Some of the things I might use in this video would be this color wheel and the HSB color layers actions, and maybe just showing for some examples the RGB and CMY actions and the Max Chromatograph HCWB adjustment actions. And that's just as a quick example of another way you could do this, but the True HueInvert is like a simple action that does sort of flipping the colors around in a unique way. So let me get right into it. I'm going to go into my copy of Photoshop. And let's say that I had in my actions panel, I've got the window actions panel opened here. Let's say, I'm going to delete that. Let's say I didn't have anything loaded. I could load this action file that I downloaded right here by dragging it into the actions panel, or by going to this tab and doing load actions. So starting off with just this, we'll see that there are three actions labeled invert hues, swap red blue, invert hues, swap red green, and invert hues, swap blue green. Basically, all this is doing, if I zoom in on just this hue angle here, just this hue circle that shows all the hue angle degrees. Same thing would be like this, the outer ring, or some of this inner set of colors. If we press the swap blue, red, blue, that basically swaps the red and blue channels around. If we do the swap green, red, it should go and flip these two. Yeah, okay. And if we do the blue, green, the same with these two. All right, so what does this mean in terms of an image? And what is the deal with the actions like, right? Why do we have the action? It's just doing a channel mixer adjustment. And that channel mixer adjustment is really just mimicking switching those colors around. So you can just take your original image and go to Image Adjustments, Channel Mixer, and you would take your red channel and say, I don't want it to have any red in it, and so make that 0, and say to this, make it 100. I want it to just be all made out of blue. But now you got to take the blue channel and do the opposite, so make it have 0 blue and 100% red. And that flips the two channels around. So you could also do that through an adjustment layer, which would be the better way to do it than the action. We'll get into that maybe in another video or at the end of this. But basically just showing you this is a really cool effect, and not always thought of in terms of some photography and imagery, but you could achieve it in a lot of different ways. So I'm sure people have other actions or other methods to do this, and this isn't really unique or original or new. This is just my way of approaching it. So there's also ways to do it, I think, through selective color. You could try to take the reds and switch them to blues by making there be no yellow in it and more cyan. Change the blues to reds by making it have maybe no cyan in it and more yellow. But then the range in between the two doesn't really, that would stay the same, but they kind of get muddy. Other stuff doesn't change. So you could also do this through those actions I was showing you. Like if you had the RGB and CMY, you could just change the red and green primaries to, change the red to blue and the blue to red. Same with the CMY. You could flip things around. If you have these, you could do the 6 hues and just change the hues around to whatever you want. But the thing is, this is a really cool effect, especially on different images, which I'm going to show in just a second here. And you shouldn't have to go through all of that to do this effect. So the channel mixer is seemingly one of the easiest ways to do it. And that's what these actions do, is just kind of speed that up to just show this effect is really cool. So what am I talking about? Swapping hues around and the contrast between the hues. Because there's something that happens here in a lot of images. And the thing is, with red and yellow and blue and cyan, or just yellow itself is one of the brightest looking hues to our eyes visually. Cyan is also really bright. Magenta and green kind of in different ways. Relative. Green seems very bright relatively because it's got, yellow and cyan as the neighbors of it. Magenta then by contrast to the blue and red looks brighter to those two, but to green and magenta themselves are sort of opposites. But anyway, there's a lot of contrast sometimes in an image through just the hues and not just in the black and white values. So let's look at one of these images and think about that. This one's really cool. There's some others here. Let me find some, especially flame images show this really well. And like nighttime imagery, like let's say a moon, and then let's say the opposite side of that, like a sunset or something. But there's also a difference when you can see clearly that there's hue differences and contrast between them. Let's look at actually a normal kind of sunset photo. Any of these are really cool imagery to show this. Okay, so we'll start off with this one, and there's a certain thing that happens when you try to take images like this and say, well, I want to see it in blue rather than in this yellow, orange, red color. And if you switch it around, you might get something like this, where it looks like it's in the blues, okay? But what's happening is the cyans are out here, and the blues are there. And I'll show you on this color wheel again. So what happens if you just try to use the adjustment with a hue, thinking you would try to switch the hues around, you can use the slider and move the hues. You see what happens is the cyan's here and the blue is there. The red is actually the darker than the yellow. So when you flip them like that, you're sort of inverting the contrast. You're doing the same to the blue and cyan region. So let's look at this image again. And instead of taking the hue and moving it this way, what if we did that channel mixer thing, swapping the red and blue? Well, now it's like flipped it around, and it just looks right. It looks like it's got the right amount of contrast as it had before, but it's in the different hues. So that's what's really cool about this effect, is it kind of does things and maintains the contrast of the hues of an image that you're working on. So this right here, if I took it and just went to that hue saturation and shifted it around, you notice what happens when it flips contrast like that. And it's like, yeah, it's got the blues and the cyans, but they're in the opposite places where you visually want to see them, as far as like keeping the contrast of the image intact, the dark and the light tones, or the dark and light appearance of the hues. So doing the swap red blue, suddenly we've got, it's like the cool blue flames, or sort of like icy effect done right, and that's what's really cool about it. And I'm sure this is done in a lot of ways. Other people have an approach to this, and other methods or instructors have found ways, maybe people just doing things naturally, colorizing it, gradient map. There's a bunch of ways to approach it, I'm sure. to get this effect. But for me, I was just looking at it from the theory perspective of I wanted to do something with the hue range of an image, you know, independently, but do it very quickly and not just have to split it all up with those other actions and just process the hue information itself, like to have it work on a full image. And so that's what this does. It maintains that, like when I do swap red blue, everything kind of stays with the color, like the dark to light information, the tonal stuff, and it just swaps those channels around. So it's different from rotating the hues. Let's look at some of those other images. So this, the nighttime with the moon, swap red blue, now it looks like it's on fire. And let's just do undo and see how it's different from rotating the hues. That's mostly what I find is shocking, because I've seen these kind of things before and not realized like that's what was happening. Like you go to this and shift these hues around, and it looks like like you don't get the blue part you want. You can get maybe this, you know, some other cool stuff, but swap red blue channel, and there you go. This one, it's like sunset, and then looks like nighttime. Like that to me is like almost dead on between the two. The switching between the two is like looks like a sunset, definitely. And then this you could almost say is like a nighttime shot with the moon just being, you know, overexposed. So anyway, there's a lot of other examples that this works on, but I found that it's also the difference in the contrast of an image. You know, so there's usually it's stuff with the red and yellows and the blues and cyans. There's not a lot of images that do like the magenta all the way to the red, but this one should work similar. You know, and again, if I open up the hue adjuster, it's not, there's certain images when you shift this around, you're like not getting the right contrast. You're rotating the hue rather than inverting it. So that's why I call this the True HueInvert. And I think it's just a very fun effect. So it's free to download. You can then use it on whatever, have fun with it. So this would be where maybe the green and the yellow have some contrast to each other, and we can like switch it around that way. You could still rotate the hue after this, and you can still load it with a channel. Let's do it that way too. Show this in the video. Okay, you could just load the channel mixer and then go to, let's say, the red, say 0, 100 on the blue, then go to blue for the output channel and say 100 red and 0 blue. And this would be the red blue, so swap red blue. And that's like a live adjustment effect of the same thing as the actions. So again, you don't really need to download the actions. You could do this same thing and then put it on any image. Let me look at some more of these examples. Yeah, so you could do some cool stuff. This is like an Adobe stock, free stock image. So you can take it when there's like a magenta and blue contrast. So magenta seemingly is the brighter color here. And if I try to do that hue sliding or rotating, you can see with the cyan and blue, it doesn't really, they're like flipped, right? So anytime you see that when you're trying to flip it, you might know you could do the swap channels effect. And there you go. You know, you can have it look like that. So it's really cool. You wouldn't, you know, it's not the same way as the rotating the hue around. And so it works with all sorts of cool stuff like this. And there's something about the contrast too. This is another interesting side note to what this, just getting into this stuff shows. When you adjust the levels of an image or the brightness and contrast, and I'm going to go to image adjustments. Let's say brightness and contrast, and using the legacy mode, if I increase the contrast, you'll see the yellow, the cyan, and the magenta, the red. You see it all just basically turns into like a thresholding of it. If you increase the levels, bring them in like this, it does the same thing. But let's look at it the other way around. If you increase the levels with the light part towards the dark, do you see how it's pushing the yellow, cyan, magenta into the red, green, blue almost completely? And if we do the opposite, we're pushing the blue, green, red into the yellow, magenta, cyan. And so this, as like a principle, is how the red, green, blue are like darker than those cyan and yellow and magenta hues. And so you can actually take some images, and let's say looking at this, we might want to extract that hue information. So I can go ahead and maybe use one of those actions, like the HSB color layers, and then run this on this water, and just look at the hues, the layer of the hues. Okay, and I can actually group these together to make it a little easier. All right. And so if I wanted to, I could process on that hue one of those levels adjustments and sort of like narrow in on capturing more detail between the blue and the cyan in the image. Okay, and then if you had that flattened and you flipped it around, you basically get more of the red to yellow. So sometimes when you see an image and you see you got like stuff that is the hues are almost there, you could sort of pull out a lot of contrast that's different. And so doing this again, flipping it like that, now it's really bright and really obvious. But if you shifted the hue around, it's just not necessarily the same effect when they're like this. It almost looks like a cool texture now rather than water or fire, right? I mean, it's still cool artistically, but I think what happens is you lose the original contrast of the image that sort of gives your eyes some information to work with. So I think it works on stuff like that really, really well. Like here, you might want to shift the hues of this image around. They look cool in all these ways. I think it's cool to do this too. Just swap red, blue, swap green, red. You could just keep using either of these around and just like click on them, see if you like what you get. I'm just having fun here. So there's another one. This one I thought would be interesting because there's some reds and yellows in the phone, but magenta out there. So would we do like swap green, red? Maybe do some levels. Nice. So the blue is now the darker, the magenta is like that brighter part. Nice. You could shift that one. Let me see. There we go. Cyan and blue there. So anyway, this is just a quick action. I thought I'd just make a new video to get into some of this stuff with it. I'm looking forward to the next videos to show you guys what you can do with the full spectrum gradient map and the photo tessellator. But this one with the True HueInvert is just really fun. I wanted to make a new video to put it out and start putting some new content out, show you guys all the stuff I've been doing in the past year or so. Hope everybody is doing well. And, thanks for watching and supporting me and being both subscribers, customers, however you found me. I appreciate you, liking and subscribing and downloading whatever you want, and especially if you purchase anything, I'll help you out however you need. Email me if you have any trouble or can't download the files or can't afford it or something. I'm really cool to work with. So anyway, this stuff is cool. It's just a different way I found to do something. I couldn't really find a way to do it another way. And so the channel mixer effect is pretty cool here. Swap red, blue. I like that one. This one right here. See, it's like if you take this, you shift that hue, rotate it, you can see that it would work like red and yellow already. So that works and shifts to magenta and blue. But when you move that one over to the blue and cyan, it's like not quite their opposite. So swap it. Now you could get the blue and cyan out of it right there. That one. So it's like different than the way you'd get it through this alone. You could kind of combine the two. So, and there's just, infinite ways in which to use all this stuff, but I thought a lot of these examples were just really cool. How they just immediately work when you swap the channels rather than rotate the hue around. There you go. And the same thing works on a lot of like imagery where you'll have hues that work in the image, like the contrasts of the image itself are made with a lot of hue information. That's cool. Okay. All right, so I'm going to conclude this video. We will pick it up in another. This one, oh, that's just, just comes out just right. And you can, maybe you've seen it before. I've seen this effect where it's like you do it this way and it just isn't working, and I think this is the key when you're having that, is you just swap the channels around instead of really using the hue adjuster to do it. So to me, that's like the cool part of this action, and the thing I wanted to use to just show in the video, teach how to do it manually, and then get you guys started on some of the new content. So thanks for watching and subscribing, and stay tuned for a whole bunch of new videos. Take care.